Alright, y'all. I'm going to make this short, sweet, and to the point. But first things first. I want to say thank you to those of you who have prayed for me and prayed for my coughing and all that. It is getting much, much better. Um, and I appreciate all your prayers. I do have a small remnant of that cough left, so I'm going to make this video short, sweet, and to the point. Those of you who have been with me for a while, you're going to understand exactly what I'm talking about. If you haven't been with me a while, you may have to go back and watch some of the other videos to get a gist of what I'm saying. Okay? Now, what we have been doing here lately is putting the finishing touches on our 2 years of the rapture cycle. The first year getting ready, and the second year being the harvest, okay? The reason why I asked you guys to give me some grace and mercy is because I knew when I was getting the revelations that I didn't have the full picture. And as it turns out, I did have one, actually two of the puzzle pieces in the wrong place. And once I got those, well, I didn't sort it out. God showed me. Once He showed me where to put it, it all made sense. Okay, so let's start with the first thing. Right here, we've been working on this particular area right here, trying to figure out how this is going to work with those three tabernacles. We have God's true tabernacles, which we now know is the Pentecost where we will know it. We have the Jewish Hanukkah, and we have God's true Hanukkah right here. And trying to figure out how He was going to use all three in this year, the first year, versus how He would use it down here for that last harvest cycle. It turns out that it's two different things. I recently shared with y'all this vision I had with the 5 weeks of gathering and how it would be done. Some of y'all may remember that, and some of you may not. Go back and look at my last vision. Okay, that 5 weeks of gathering is going to happen here during the harvest cycles, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But these 4 harvest cycles is how the 5-week gatherings are going to take place. Right here is going to be different, okay? We know that the first tabernacles becomes a Pentecost where we will know it, all right? This Jewish Hanukkah right here, God has revealed to me that this is going to be a time of testing. It's going to start around December 22nd, 1st, somewhere in there, okay? And it will be a 40 days of testing from here to God's true Hanukkah. And then He showed me parallels in the scripture. He said that this is where Jesus was out in the wilderness for 40 days. Then He gathered His disciples. Hear me in the spirit. He gathered His disciples. Then He went to the wedding at Cana, where He turned water into wine. Hear what I'm saying, okay? They had to go out and get vessels. They had to get new wineskins, so to speak, okay? It's also a parallel to Lazarus. Remember I told you Jesus waited in the wilderness for 40 days and then an extra 4 days, and then He resurrected Lazarus. So we got Jesus doing 40 days in the wilderness and gathering His disciples, but He's waiting in the wilderness and then He's resurrecting Lazarus after 4 days. And I told you those 4 days have to do with the moon cycle, which I'm going to show you here in a second, okay? So the 5 weeks of gathering that I had in the vision will happen here. But this right here is going to be 40 days of testing all the way to God's true Hanukkah. And that's how He's going to use all 3 Hanukkahs in this first year. Now guys, as always, I have no idea what year this is going to happen. It feels like it could happen now, but we don't know that, okay? And I can't promise anything until I get word from somebody. So I'm just going to show you this as an example of this year. The end of January is God's true Hanukkah, which is the pseudo tabernacles. So if we look at the 4 days he waited to get Lazarus, we see a transition into the new moon right here around the last day of tabernacles, where we could possibly hear the trumpet sound at the end of January on the new moon, and it would be the last day of tabernacles. So, of course, it would be the last trump where we could be gathered and taken at this point. All right. And then from this point on, where the field is already white, let me show you what happens with the weddings at this point. So we were also talking about the 7-year wedding and the 7-day wedding. What would take place when? And this is another puzzle piece I had out of place. And I appreciate the grace and mercy, okay? We were close. Well, I was close. But God had to straighten this out for me. All right. I was trying to make the 7-day wedding happen before the 7-year wedding, and that's what I had backwards. All right. I told y'all that Jesus' timeline would be trumpets to trumpets, and his 7 years in blue would run here. Ours would be Hanukkah to Hanukkah in pink, running this way. Okay. What's going to happen is the 7-year wedding is going to take place before the 7-day wedding. All right. You have the 7-year wedding right here. Then we have those 4 harvest cycles throughout the year. When we get to the end of the year, that's when we will have the 7-day wedding. Okay. I had them backwards and I apologize. But this makes more sense, and let me show you why. All right. Once you get married, you cannot do any work or go to war for 1 year, right? So when Jesus gets married to us, this becomes day 1 of our consummation. This becomes day 2, day 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, so that by the time we get here, we've had our 7th day of consummation with Jesus, and then we have that wedding supper of the Lamb, okay? And we're already married at that point. So when we get down here to the end of this first year, after the harvest has been gathered, then we have the Gentile bride broken down into first fruits, main harvest, and gleaning. The bride, the wedding guest, and the poor and needy. Okay, and these are just symbolic meanings. Okay, so we have that 7-day wedding followed by what? A 1-year honeymoon. We're not doing anything. We're not going to war. We're not gathering a harvest. We're not doing anything. Okay? So, right here, when Jesus gets married to us and then he gathers us as a harvest, it's just symbolic of him gathering in his bride for that first day of consummation. Because I told y'all this whole thing becomes a bride to him. But we are a bride within a bride within a bride. Now, look what happens when you swap the 7-day with the 7-year wedding. You put the 7-year wedding up here, the 7-day wedding down here. You have the 1-year honeymoon, you're not going to war, and you're not harvesting anything. Okay? Not only that, you're still getting married in a Shemitah and or Jubilee year like we're supposed to. Okay? I told y'all, if you go back and look at my older videos where I showed y'all the Shemitah and Jubilee years, 2024 into 2025 was a Gentile Shemitah year. All right? So with God's calendar running from the 1st of May to the end of April, we get married right here before the new year on God's calendar. We're still getting married in that Shemitah year. All right. Now, 25 to 26 is also a Shemitah year, but it's on the Jewish timeline. So we're still having our 7-day wedding within a Shemitah year. All right. Now, because you can't go to war, you got to have a 1-year honeymoon, and you can't do any work or anything like that. Look what this does for us. Harvesting us is like him bringing his bride into his chamber for that first day of consummation. But then on the 7-day wedding, we get married down here. We have this whole year off where we're not doing anything. Now, guys, go back to that first picture that I showed you. In the first year where we're feel it, know it, and become it, this 40 days between Christmas and the end of January, or December 22nd to the end of January, it becomes 40 days of testing for us to fit the parallel and the types and shadows. But in year 2, when he's gathering the harvest, it will take place over 5 weeks, like that vision I showed you. So I asked God, I said, why is it different? Why do you have us waiting till the very last second here, but you've got all this notification going out during these 5 weeks? And what he said to me was, we don't need 5 weeks of notice because we have been aware of the rapture. We know it's coming. We have been looking for it and waiting on it. And most people are pretty much ready to go. So we just go on the appointed day. But here, he's dealing with people who believe in him, but they may not have heard of the rapture. And he wants to give them a chance to go home. So he has to give them a little bit of a notification to let them know to get ready to go home and do whatever they need to get done. And to also try to reach some of their family members as well. Okay? If you recall in the last full teaching I did, God actually gave us a clue to help narrow down the timing of the rapture. And if you understand what we're doing here and where we're going with all this, you may have caught this clue. In order for the 2 years to work, where they parallel each other, year 1 being the feel it, know it, become it, and year 2 being the harvest, you will notice that the only way this can work is for the Jewish Hanukkah to land on or near Christmas time. So it has to be within that December 21st to 31st time frame in order for this to work. And not only that, it's got to be 4 years apart because you have the Gentile bride and the Jewish bride. So it's got to happen 4 years apart, all right? So I went back and looked at all the Jewish Hanukkahs for the upcoming years where they would land at Christmas time and the 2-year timeline could work, where they were actually 4 years apart. And here are the 3 options: 25 to 28, 27 to 30, and 33 to 36. Now, guys, even though it looks like we're going home this year, please remember that there's always the possibility it may not happen this year. If that's the case, I will continue to teach and do what God wants me to do. I will be here for y'all. Questions, prayers, concerns, any of that. I'm at childofgod515@gmail.com. But hear me well. When I say if it doesn't happen this year, I personally am not going to get back on the Rapture roller coaster until about 2027. Okay? And it's going to have to be, December, January before I get back on that roller coaster in 2027. But like I said, I will continue to teach. And this is the reason why I'm not going to push any more dates until about 2027 if this year comes and goes. But hopefully we're going to go home here soon because there's a part of me that feels like he's not going to tell us till the last minute. And he's going to keep us guessing until the last minute. Because like I said before, if he tells us too soon, we're going to rapture prematurely. And he doesn't want that. But anyway, with all that being said, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. May he lift up his countenance upon you and give you his peace. Shalom.